I was late. That was the first thing that hit me as I walked through the door. The house was too quiet. Normally, there'd be the sound of music coming from the kitchen, the hum of her laughter as she made dinner, the scent of garlic and thyme in the air. But tonight? Nothing. Silence wrapped itself around me like a thick blanket, heavy and suffocating. I set my keys down on the table and called out for her. No response. It wasn't unusual for her to be in the other room, lost in a book or on the phone with a friend. But tonight, something felt different. My gut twisted. Maybe it was the way the house felt, empty, even with everything in its place. I wandered into the living room, looking around for any sign of her. Then I noticed the laptop on the coffee table. Open. Unattended. Her laptop. She never left it like that. She always closed it when she was done, always tucked it away like it was her most precious possession. But tonight? The screen was glowing faintly in the dark, her email inbox open, a few tabs blinking up at me. I should have just walked away. I knew it wasn't my place. She deserved her privacy. But there was something, some small instinct in me, that made me stop. To pause. To look. The first tab was innocuous enough, a shopping website. I almost clicked away, but something kept me there. The second tab? A news article, something about the stock market. Then a third tab. A forum thread. The words on the screen caught my attention. Why you should never trust your partner. I froze. My breath hitched in my chest, my heart skipping a beat. This wasn't just a random click. This wasn't a harmless Google search. The thread was long, filled with posts and comments, each one more damning than the last. As I scrolled, I saw familiar phrases, cheating signs, emotional distance, secrets in the relationship. I wanted to look away. To slam the laptop shut and pretend I hadn't seen it. But my hands betrayed me. I couldn't stop reading. There was more. So much more. Another tab opened to a dating app one knew she'd never mentioned before. Her profile was active, a recent photo of her smiling, one I'd never seen before, like it was taken just a few days ago. It was shocking, like the air had been knocked out of me. I felt the weight of the truth settling in, an invisible hand pressing against my chest. The tightness spread to my throat, making it hard to breathe. I didn't know what I was hoping to find. I wasn't sure if I even wanted to know. But there it was. The proof I didn't want, the truth I never thought I'd uncover. I clicked on the next tab. It was a chat thread. A conversation between her and someone else. At first, I couldn't make sense of it. It was coded in the way that only people who knew each other deeply could speak. And then it hit me, the flirtation, the inside jokes, the kind of intimacy that was reserved for two people who weren't supposed to be sharing it with anyone else. Not me. Not us. I read every word, each message a dagger that seemed to pierce a little deeper into my heart. They were planning something. A weekend getaway. A hotel reservation. In a city I knew she had never mentioned before. Not once. The world around me started to spin. I felt dizzy, like the floor was shifting beneath me, and I had nothing to hold on to. The details blurred in front of me, her words, her actions, everything that once made sense now seemed like a lie. I had to be mistaken. Maybe this was all a coincidence. Maybe I was overreacting. But there was no mistaking the evidence. It was right in front of me, in the open. I leaned back against the couch, my legs weak, and closed my eyes. How could I not have seen this coming? It was then that I heard the sound of footsteps from the hallway. The door creaked open, and I turned, my stomach dropping. She stepped into the room, eyes wide, a startled look on her face. "Why are you on my laptop?" she asked, her voice sharp, defensive. The question hung in the air like a challenge. But I didn't have an answer. I couldn't explain why I had gone looking, why I had invaded her privacy. And yet, I didn't need to explain. The evidence was there. It was undeniable. My heart raced as I stood up slowly, unsure of what to say. My mind was racing, trying to piece together everything I had just read, trying to make sense of the overwhelming feeling of betrayal. I could see the panic in her eyes, the way she was already trying to prepare herself for the confrontation. But it was too late. There was no going back. Her voice faltered, a nervous laugh escaping her lips. Look, it's not what you think. I stared at her, my body tense, my fists clenched at my sides. I wanted to scream, to yell, to demand answers. But instead, all I could do was stand there, paralyzed, as the truth continued to sink in. "You don't have to lie to me anymore," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She froze. The color drained from her face, and for a moment, we both just stood there, suspended in this painful silence. I watched as her expression shifted, the mask she had worn for so long beginning to crack. "I'm sorry," she whispered, barely audible. "I didn't know how to tell you." I took a step forward, the pain bubbling up inside me like an unstoppable wave. "Tell me what?" "That you've been living a double life." The words came out sharper than I intended, laced with all the hurt and disbelief I felt. "That while I've been here, trusting you, you've been doing this." "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, her voice breaking, tears welling up in her eyes. "I never wanted to hurt you. But it didn't matter anymore. The damage was done. The trust was gone, shattered into 1,000 pieces." I shook my head. I didn't want her apology. I didn't want to hear her excuses. Not now. Not after everything I had just seen. "I don't know who you are anymore," I said, my voice hoarse. "I don't even know who I am in all of this." She opened her mouth to say something, but I cut her off, holding up my hand. There was nothing left to say. I had all the answers I needed. I walked out of the room, leaving her standing there, broken and regretful, while the words from the browser tabs burned into my mind. I spent the next few days in a fog, wandering through the motions of my day as though my mind and body were at odds. I went to work, sat at my desk, answered emails, and made small talk with colleagues, but my thoughts were elsewhere, always swirling around the events that had unfolded in that room. I couldn't escape the image of her standing there, the guilt and panic in her eyes. The way she stammered, trying to explain herself, but every word felt like a hollow attempt to justify the inevitable. I hadn't known how to feel in the moment. I had been too consumed by the hurt, too overwhelmed by the betrayal to process what she was really saying. But now, in the silence of my apartment, I could think clearly. Too clearly. And all I could do was replay the scenes over and over again, each one cutting deeper than the last. I hadn't expected this. I'd never seen the signs. How could I have been so blind? I thought of all the times she'd stayed late at work, or the girls' nights she'd insisted on having. All the little things that never seemed to add up. The late-night phone calls, the strange messages, the way she'd grown more distant. I had brushed them off as trivial. I had told myself it was nothing. But now, everything had a meaning I couldn't ignore. I couldn't even bring myself to call her. Not yet. I didn't know what to say to her, didn't know if I wanted to hear any more of her excuses or explanations. In my mind, the damage was done. The trust we had was shattered, and no amount of apologizing would ever fix that. I had thought we were happy. I had thought we were fine. But now? The whole foundation of everything we'd built together felt like it was crumbling beneath me. I needed to clear my head, so I grabbed my keys and went for a walk. As I stepped out into the cool evening air, the weight of the world seemed to lift, even if just a little. There was a strange sense of freedom in being outside, surrounded by the hum of the city, the noise of passing cars, and people bustling about, all going on with their lives as if nothing had changed. But something inside me had changed. I didn't know how to move forward. Did I confront her again? Did I give her another chance to explain herself? Or was this the final straw, the point where everything unraveled, where we both realized we had outgrown each other? I walked for hours, trying to shake the images of that damn laptop and the incriminating tabs from my mind. But they kept coming back, unbidden, relentless. When I returned home, I found myself standing at the door, my hand hovering over the doorknob, unsure of whether I even wanted to walk back inside. It was like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, unsure of whether to step forward or turn away. I opened the door slowly and stepped inside. The apartment felt cold and empty. Everything was as it had been when I left, no signs of her, no evidence that she had even been here. The silence was deafening. I went to the kitchen, opening the fridge without thinking, but I couldn't even stomach the thought of eating. I stood there for a moment, leaning against the counter, my mind racing. How had I gotten here? How had everything I thought I knew about her, about us, disappeared in an instant? I grabbed my phone, still unsure whether I wanted to talk to her or not. I knew she would want to explain. I knew she would want to make things right. But could I ever trust her again? The silence of the apartment pressed in on me, and I realized I needed to make a decision. I could keep running from this, keep pretending that everything was fine, or I could confront it head-on and figure out what the next step was. I pulled up her number, hesitating for a moment, the screen glaring at me. I wasn't sure if I was ready. I wasn't sure if I would ever be ready. Just as I was about to put the phone down, the doorbell rang. I froze. Who could it be? At this hour? I walked slowly to the door, my heart beating faster with each step. I didn't even check through the peephole before opening it. And there she was. Her face was drawn, her eyes red from crying, her shoulders hunched in a way that made her seem smaller, like she was carrying the weight of the world on her back. She was holding something. Her bag? No. It was an envelope. I didn't say anything right away. What was there to say? She stood there for a long moment, as if waiting for me to invite her in, but I just stared at her, unsure of what to do, unsure of what she wanted. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft, almost pleading. I couldn't let you go like that. I didn't respond. The last thing I wanted was to hear her apologies, her excuses. But at the same time, I felt this pull, this unspoken connection, like a string between us that hadn't snapped yet. She took a deep breath, her eyes searching mine. I know I've hurt you. And I know I don't deserve a second chance. But please, just hear me out. I didn't want to. I wanted to slam the door, to tell her to leave, to be done with it all. But I didn't. Instead, I opened the door a little wider, stepped back, and let her in. As she walked past me, her steps slow, hesitant, she slid the envelope into my hand. Open it, she whispered. I looked down at the envelope, unsure of what to expect. Was this another apology? Another lie? Or was it something worse? I tore open the flap, my heart pounding. Inside, I found a single letter. Handwritten. It wasn't what I expected. The letter was simple, written in a hurried hand, the ink smudged slightly as if it had been written in a rush. The edges of the paper were folded awkwardly, like it had been crammed into the envelope at the last minute. I turned it over in my hands, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. She was standing in the doorway, her eyes fixed on me, waiting for a reaction. I could hear her breathing, shallow and uncertain, as if she was bracing for something I was yet to say. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. My hands trembled slightly as I unfolded the letter, the creases stubborn in their refusal to lie flat. It began simply. I'm sorry. It felt like the most meaningless phrase in the world in that moment. I had heard it 100 times before from people who had no idea what it meant to apologize, no idea what it meant to truly feel the weight of their actions. I read it again, as if expecting the words to suddenly carry more weight or significance. But they didn't. I read on. I don't know how to explain. I don't know what I was thinking. I thought I was doing the right thing, and now I know how wrong I was. I paused. The words hit me in strange ways. Part of me wanted to rip the letter in half and walk away. Another part of me, a part one hated, was desperate to understand. I wanted to hear her side, to know why she had done this, why she had kept so much from me. Why everything had been a lie. It wasn't just the work late nights or the texts or the lies. It was me. I lost myself somewhere, and I didn't know how to find my way back. I thought I could balance everything, the love I had for you, the life I thought I wanted, the secrets I was keeping. But it all became too much. And I'm so sorry for that. I didn't think about how it would hurt you. I didn't think about the trust one was breaking. I swallowed hard. The words on the page were raw, almost desperate in their honesty. I could feel her pain in the sentences, the way she was trying to explain herself, trying to justify everything she had done. It made me angry, but also, sad. Sad for her. Sad for the relationship we had, for the love that had once felt so pure but now felt like a distant memory. A memory that had been tainted by things I couldn't unsee. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But please know this, I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to break you. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just need you to know that I regret everything. And I'll live with that regret for the rest of my life. I stopped reading. My eyes stung. The words were starting to blur as I blinked away the tears that threatened to spill. I had to stop myself from breaking down. I couldn't let her see me like this. Not yet. I closed the letter, folding it carefully before placing it back in the envelope. My hands felt cold, numb. I looked up at her. She was still standing by the door, her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to protect her own fragile heart. She looked smaller than I remembered, like someone who had been worn down by guilt and regret. Why? The word left my mouth before I could stop it, quiet but sharp. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you just tell me what was going on? She shook her head, her eyes welling up with tears. I couldn't. I didn't know how. I thought I could keep it all together. I thought I could manage it. But I couldn't. And now I'm paying the price. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know if there was anything left to say. The questions kept swirling in my mind, but none of them had easy answers. I stood there, staring at her, watching the way her chest rose and fell as she tried to steady her breathing. The woman who had been my partner, my love, was now a stranger to me. The person I had trusted more than anyone in the world had betrayed that trust in a way I couldn't even comprehend. And yet, here she was, standing in front of me, offering me the only thing she had left, her regret. I ran my hand through my hair, frustration bubbling up in me. This isn't just about a couple of lies. It's not about the late nights or the missed phone calls. It's about everything, everything we were. Everything we built. And now it's all falling apart. I know, she whispered. I know. And I hate myself for it. I wish I could take it all back. I wish I could go back to that night when I made the decision to. She stopped herself, shaking her head. But I can't. I can't change what I did. All I can do is apologize and hope, somehow, that you'll understand. I wanted to yell at her. I wanted to tell her that there was no understanding, no fixing this. But instead, I just stood there, feeling empty. Hollow. I couldn't look at her anymore. The image of her sitting on the other side of the couch, laughing and talking about our future, now felt like a cruel joke. Everything I thought I knew about her, about us, had been shattered by the truth I had uncovered. I don't know what to do with this, I said finally, my voice quiet and lost. I don't know how to move forward. She nodded slowly, her eyes filled with a sadness I had never seen before. I understand. I don't expect you to. But if you need time, if you need space, I'll give it to you. I felt the weight of her words, but it didn't make it easier. How could it? How could anything make this easier? I turned away, walking toward the window, staring out at the city lights below. I felt detached from everything, her, the apartment, the life I had built. It all felt so far away, like I was looking at someone else's life. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said quietly. The words tasted bitter as they left my mouth. But I don't know what comes next. I understand, she repeated, her voice small. I'll wait. For as long as it takes. But I won't push you. I just need you to know how sorry I am. I didn't know what to say after that. So, I said nothing. And with that, she left. Her footsteps echoed in the hallway, and the door clicked shut behind her. I stood there for a long time, the silence settling in like an old friend. But it wasn't comforting. It wasn't peaceful. It was just empty. The emptiness of what we had lost. The days that followed felt like I was living in a dream. A dream I couldn't wake up from. Her words echoed in my mind constantly, like a broken record spinning on repeat, and I couldn't get them out. Every time I thought I was starting to find my footing again, a wave of guilt would crash over me, and I'd be back at square one. I spent most of my time in the apartment, too tired to go out, too worn down to face the outside world. Work had become an autopilot routine, and the weekends were even worse. The silence of the apartment without her there felt suffocating, like a heavy blanket I couldn't lift. But it wasn't just the absence of her that hurt. It was everything she had left behind, our shared memories, the things we had planned, the things we thought we would do together. They all now felt like nothing more than broken promises. Her absence was more than physical, it was emotional, spiritual, and it was eating me alive. I would catch myself looking at my phone, expecting to see a message from her, a sign that she was still out there, that this wasn't the end. But there was nothing. The silence stretched for days, then weeks, and still, she never called. Never tried to come back. I didn't know what I wanted from her anymore. I didn't know if I even wanted her back. But what I did know was that I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing something precious, something irreplaceable. The guilt wasn't just hers, it was mine too. I had thought I could avoid confronting the full extent of the situation. I had told myself that time would heal the wounds. But time only seemed to make them worse, made the ache inside me grow sharper, more acute. I couldn't move forward, not while the pieces of our life together were scattered in the ruins of what had once been. One afternoon, I sat down at the kitchen table with her letter again. I don't know why, but I felt compelled to read it again, as if the words would offer me some kind of clarity that they hadn't before. I had read it so many times now, each word branded into my memory, but I couldn't help myself. I opened the envelope and read it again, slowly this time, letting the words sink in. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I was protecting you, protecting us, but I was only fooling myself. The words struck me harder this time, like they were meant for me, like they were a mirror held up to my face. And for the first time, I wondered if she had ever really meant the things she had said when we were happy. Did she love me? Or was that just something I had imagined, something I had clung to because I needed to believe it? I set the letter down on the table, my hands shaking. I couldn't think straight. My emotions were a whirlwind, anger, sadness, confusion, and they were all vying for control. I wanted to be angry at her. I wanted to scream at her for what she had done. But in the quiet of my apartment, with the letter still on the table, I realized something. I was angry at myself. For being blind. For not seeing the signs. For letting myself get so lost in the idea of us that I ignored everything that wasn't right. I had been so eager to forgive her, so eager to hold on to something that had already been broken, that I had never really faced the reality of what had happened. Her secrets, her second life, were no longer just hers. They were mine too. They had become part of me, and I couldn't just let them go. The letter sat there, mocking me, reminding me of what I had lost and what I could never get back. I couldn't let it go. The doorbell rang again the following evening. I had been pacing in the living room, caught in the midst of my thoughts, when I heard it, a sharp, insistent ring. It was so sudden, so unexpected, that I froze. For a moment, I couldn't even breathe. My heart was hammering in my chest. Who could it be? I stood there for a long time, staring at the door, the weight of everything pressing down on me. I knew who it was before I even opened it. She had come back. I didn't want to open the door, didn't want to face her. But the pull was too strong, and the door swung open before I even knew it. She was standing there, just as she had been before, but this time there was something different in her eyes. There was no pleading, no desperation. Just a quiet sadness, like she had already accepted the outcome. Her hands were empty. No envelope, no letter. She was standing there, simply waiting. I didn't say anything at first. I couldn't. My mouth was dry, and my body felt frozen, like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, unable to decide whether to step forward or step back. Finally, she broke the silence. I need to talk to you. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I didn't know what was left to say. I didn't know if there was anything she could say that would make any of this better. I've been thinking about everything, she continued, her voice thick with emotion. I know I hurt you. I know I shattered everything we had. But I need you to understand something. This isn't just about what happened between us. It's about who I am, and who I've been all along. I raised an eyebrow, unsure of what she was getting at. What do you mean? She took a deep breath, her hands shaking slightly. I wasn't just lying to you. I was lying to myself too. I thought I could have it all, that I could keep everything separate and it would all work out. But it didn't. And I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to understand that I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to stop it before it all fell apart. Her words were like a balm on a wound, but the wound was still there. I didn't know if I could ever heal from it. She stepped forward slightly, and I didn't step back. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm sorry for everything. I stared at her for a long time, the silence stretching between us, before I finally spoke. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, I said quietly. I don't know if I can ever get past this. She nodded slowly, like she had expected that answer. I know. And I don't expect you to. I didn't know what to say after that. I didn't know what to feel. But for the first time since everything had fallen apart, I realized that I was no longer angry. Not at her. Not at myself. I was just tired. Tired of the games. Tired of the lies. Tired of trying to piece together something that could never be whole again. And as I stood there, in the space between us, I knew I had to make a decision. I had to choose whether to let go of the past or to keep dragging it behind me. And for the first time, I wasn't sure I was ready to make that choice. The days after her visit felt like they stretched into eternity, each moment laden with the heaviness of unresolved questions. I kept replaying her words over and over, trying to piece together some kind of truth from the fragments she had left behind. But the more I thought about it, the more everything seemed to unravel. I spent hours sitting in my apartment, staring out of the window at the world that seemed to move on without me. The city buzzed with life, people rushing to and fro, unaware of the storm that had been swirling inside me. It felt as though I was stuck in a moment that wouldn't end, trapped in a limbo where nothing made sense, and I couldn't find my way out. I had been trying to convince myself that I was fine, that I could move past it. That I could leave the past behind and just continue. But each time I tried to push forward, the weight of her betrayal would drag me back. The words of her letter, her visit, everything we had built together, it was all like a constant echo in the back of my mind. I didn't want to be angry anymore. I didn't want to be consumed by all of this, but how could I not be? How could I not feel the wound she had left in me, the damage that had been done to something I had cherished more than anything? I tried to distract myself with work, with social media, with anything that could pull me away from the silence that haunted my apartment. I met up with friends, laughed through the moments, but each time the smile faded when I was alone. I felt more isolated than I ever had, as if I was slowly being erased from my own life. But despite everything, despite the betrayal, despite the crushing weight of my emotions, I couldn't shake the feeling that I still cared. It was strange, this mixture of anger and love, like two forces constantly battling for control. And I hated myself for still caring. One evening, just when I thought I had been moving on, when the pain had finally become a dull ache rather than a sharp stab, she called. Her name flashed on the screen, and for a moment, my heart skipped a beat. I hesitated, staring at the phone, feeling a rush of conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to press ignore, to shut it all out, to leave the past behind once and for all. But another part of me, the part one hated, wanted to know what she had to say. I took a deep breath and answered. Hello? My voice was shaky, betraying the calm I was trying so desperately to maintain. Hey, her voice came through, soft, almost hesitant. She paused, as if gathering her thoughts. I know you're probably not ready to talk to me, and I get that. But I need to explain. Please, just let me explain. I closed my eyes. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want her explanations anymore. But I couldn't bring myself to hang up. Why? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Why now? I don't know, she said. I don't know what I was expecting. I've been thinking a lot about everything. About us. And I realized that I don't have all the answers. I'm not trying to fix things. I know it's too late for that. But I want you to know that I regret everything. And I never meant for things to get so out of control. I'm tired, I whispered, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Tired of hearing you apologize. Tired of pretending I'm okay when I'm not. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about everything you broke. Everything I let you break. Her silence was deafening, and for a moment, I thought she had hung up. But then she spoke again, her voice thick with emotion. I'm sorry. I know words can't fix this, but they're all I have left. And I don't expect you to forgive me. But I want you to understand that I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to cause you this much pain. I swallowed hard. I don't know what you want me to say. I don't know what you want from me anymore. I don't want anything from you, she replied softly. I just wanted to tell you that I'm sorry. And that I'm trying to change. Not for you, not for anyone else, but for myself. Because I can't keep living in this mess I've created. And I don't expect you to wait for me. I don't expect anything from you. I needed to say it. I felt a lump rise in my throat. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. Not because I was too strong, but because I was too tired. I was tired of feeling. Tired of hurting. Tired of carrying this weight. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this, I said, my voice breaking despite myself. I don't know how to just forgive and move on. I don't know if I can. You've made me doubt everything. I don't even know who you are anymore. She was quiet again, and this time, when she spoke, her words were soft, almost a whisper. I know I've ruined everything. And I'll live with that. But I needed to say it. I needed to tell you I'm sorry. For everything. I closed my eyes, pressing the heel of my hand against them, trying to stop the tears that were welling up. My chest felt tight, my throat constricting with the weight of everything. This was the moment I had been dreading, the moment I had been avoiding. The final act of closure, but it didn't feel like closure. It felt like the beginning of something else, something I didn't know how to face. I don't know what's next, I said finally, my voice barely audible. I don't know what I want from you. I don't know if I'll ever trust you again. I understand, she said softly. I just wanted you to know how sorry I am. And with that, we hung up. The silence in the apartment was deafening. The air felt thick, suffocating. I stood there for a long time, staring at my phone, trying to process everything. The truth was, I didn't know if I could ever forgive her. I didn't know if I could ever move on from this. But I knew one thing for sure, I couldn't stay in this place forever. I couldn't keep holding on to the past, no matter how much it hurt. And so, I made a decision. I couldn't change what had happened. I couldn't undo the betrayal, the lies, the broken promises. But I could decide what came next. Maybe forgiveness would come in time. Maybe it wouldn't. But I had to start letting go, even if it meant walking away from everything I thought I knew. I wasn't sure where I was headed, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally ready to move forward. Even if it meant facing the unknown. Even if it meant starting over. And somehow, That felt like the first step toward healing.